Renault's three-door Megane Coupe brings good looks, strong value and a wide range of talents to the most affordable sector of the sports coupe market, while keeping its five-door stablemates first-rate refinement, comfort and build quality. It's not the sportiest compact three-door on the road, but as an overall package, you can see why it might command a ready audience. When is an affordable coupe a real coupe, rather than simply a three-door version of a run-of-the-mill family hatchback? Well, opinions are divided, of course, but in most cases buyers recognise reality when they see it. Thus, Volkswagen's Scirocco is seen as a proper coupe in its own right, despite its Golf engine wear. Citroen's C4 coupe, on the other hand, is clearly little more than a stylish three-door family hatch. And Renault's Megane Coupe? Well, it sits somewhere between the two. Actually, that's not a bad place to be. You could, after all, have said the same about the first generation Megane Coupe, which, following its launch here in 1996, went on to become the best-selling car of its kind in Britain for 5 years running. Hopes were high then at the launch of this model based on the third generation Megane. Renault's engineers have bothered to try and differentiate this car's driving experience, and to a huge extent with the focused Renault Sport version. All Megane Coupes, however, ride 43mm lower to the ground than their five-door stablemates, with 12mm of that total accounted for by the lowered suspension. Now, as a result, this car rides noticeably in a more firm way, but it's still far from uncomfortable on a well-surfaced road. Indeed, it must be one of the best riding small coupes out there. But an absorbent ride is not what people buy cars of this kind to get, and those same people would doubtless be disappointed if they were also served up the rather overlight steering that's used on the Megane five-door hatch. Just as well Renault have changed it then, with a variable assistance electric setup that's light at parking speeds, but weights up as you get faster. Now, it works really well, makes the car easy to place through corners, and leaves you free to enjoy the tenacious grip, the slick gearbox and the general absence of body roll. Could it be more involving? Well, as with Renault's larger Laguna Coupe, well, the answer is probably yes. And as with that car, less is probably more on the engine front, as long as it's not too much less. The 1.5 litre DCI diesel and the 1.6 litre petrol, well, they're mainly for the blue rinse brigade, while at the top of the range, or near the top of the range, the 178 brake horsepower 2 litre TCE turbo is priced to struggle against cars like Ford's Focus ST with 225 brake horsepower. That's unless you go for the really focused Renault Sport Megane Coupe with 250 brake horsepower. Now, that leaves the engines in the middle. The 1.9 DCI diesel with 130 brake horsepower makes rest to 60 in 9.5 seconds, has loads of mid-range torque. Or if you want petrol power, you could go for the 1.4 TCE 130 unit. Now, that has all the power of a 1.8 with 130 brake horsepower and the CO2 emissions of a 1.6. Those are the variants really to have, assuming, as is likely, that you can get them for the kind of money that would make an equivalent Volkswagen Scirocco seem ridiculously expensive. Renault's initial ad campaign for this model centred solely on its looks, and though the shape doesn't work from all angles, it's certainly an arresting one. Now, only the bonnet, the front wings and the headlamps are carried forward from the Megane five-door, and the brushed metal treatment here at the front ensures that this car could never be confused for a five-door variant in a head-on encounter. At the rear, the side window line rises dramatically to meet with the curving rear screen above the pumped-up haunches. Now, the downside of all this elegant glasswork is poor rear visibility, so rear parking sensors are an essential options box to tick. With these installed, the shape should be relatively easy to live with. Inside, it's all a bit more sober. The design follows that of the straight-laced Laguna, but the Megane does inherit that car's first-rate build quality, and the trim and finish is about as good as you'll get at this price point, though some of the buttons are a little bit small. The only real spark of individuality in here is the large speedo with its digital readout. Space in the rear is okay for a pair of adults, but the rakish roofline may impinge on headroom for passengers taller than me. Still, at 344 litres, the boot's on the generous side for a car of this type, and usefully shaped. Plus, of course, it's extendable with these 60/40 split rear seats. Prices range between £15,000 and £20,000 for most Megane Coupes, so there's a saving of between £1,500 and £2,000 over a comparable Volkswagen Scirocco, the car that Renault rather hopefully thinks will be this model's closest rival. The car's most obvious and most closely priced competitors include models like Vauxhall's Astra Sport Hatch, Citroen's C4 Coupe and Hyundai's Coupe. And against competitors such as these, the Megane stacks up pretty well, though some might balk at Renault's decision to price it at £400 more than the equivalent 5-door version. Still, all models get a decent quota of standard equipment, including alloy wheels, a trip computer, air conditioning, remote central locking and front fog lamps. For those after looks with light running costs, the DCI 1.5 106 brake horsepower diesel version may appeal, with its 63 miles to the gallon combined fuel economy figure, but 106 brake horsepower in a sports coupe, come on, live a little. After all, even the 1.9 litre DCI 130 manages 55.4 miles to the gallon on the combined cycle and 134 grams per kilometre of CO2. And even the petrol versions don't do too badly. The 178 brake horsepower 2 litre TCE turbo puts out 178 grams per kilometre of CO2 and manages 37 miles to the gallon on the combined cycle. Anyway, enough of that. Insurance groups, well, they range between 5 and 10 for the mainstream versions, but for the 2 litre petrol models, you're paying 13 and upwards. Is this more than simply a Renault Megane with 2 fewer doors? Certainly, and it has a wide range of talents. At the bottom of the range, well, it's pretty difficult to get these kind of looks for 15 grand, even if they're not accompanied by much in the way of power. While at the top of the range, the Renault Sport 250 version has the kind of handling and power to challenge coupes with far more exalted badges. In the middle of the lineup, the DCI 130 diesel and the 1.4 litre TCE petrol 130 models really are the best sort of all-round picks. True, their strongest suits apart from value are things like ride, refinement and comfort, not virtues you'd expect to be too high up a prospective coupe customer's wish list. Still, the prodigious sales performance of the first generation Megane Coupe suggests that buyers might be swayed anyway. You wouldn't bet against it.